Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
Some call them the Chai Sox, some call them just the Sox, but the team from the south side of Chicago is always known as the Chicago White Sox. Well, they weren't always that way, and we got some great history on it, and one of the great players that played for them from Joe Ziemba as he talks about his favorite player. It's all coming up for you in just a moment. Hi, my name's Darren Hayes, and I know you've heard me on the Pigskin Dispatch talking about football history for years. Well, now I'm on a new mission, a quest to find sports history in other sports as well as football by learning through the jerseys and the apparel and the gear that the players wore and the franchises supplied their teams. It's an educational trip, and I'm taking you with me day by day, player by player, uniform by uniform. The Sports Jersey Dispatch.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my sports history friends. This is Darren Hayes of the Sports Jersey Dispatch, and welcome once again to the Pigpen, your place to learn sports history through the gear and the uniforms that the competitors wore. And we have a really great themed podcast for you today. As you can see from the title, we're going to be talking a lot about the Chicago White Sox. And this is inspired by a conversation that I had recently with our great historian that we like to talk to quite often from Chicago area, Joe Ziemba, as he talks about one of his favorite players from Chicago White Sox history. And we'll take you to that conversation right now. So do you have anybody else you'd like to talk about today?
I have a number two, again from the Chicago White Sox, was Nellie Fox. Got into the Hall of Fame years ago. The reason I remember him is there was a baseball game, and I'm trying to think of the name of it, but you would get a card for every Major League Baseball player. It was a circle, and in that circle would have spaces. If they got a single, it'd be a wide space. The biggest space was for outs. If they walked a lot, a smaller space, and you would spin the dial, and Nellie Fox was among the cards there. Even these could be retired or current players. And it was reason that Nellie Fox was one I remember is that he never struck out. So his strikeout zone on that little card was so small, as was his home run space, because Nellie Fox rarely hit a home run. In a long, long career, he only hit 35 home runs. But as I said, a member of the Hall of Famer, 12 times an All-Star, the MVP in 59 when the White Sox won the pennant, led the league in fielding percentage, but his biggest strength was singles. And so on that card, we had a wide gap that would say 1B. That means single. I figured that out at an early age, and he'd get the one base. And so Nellie, as I recall, if you see pictures of him, always had a chaw in his mouth. Of course, we won't see that with players nowadays, and formed a great combo in the middle of the infield with Louis Aparicio, number 11 for the White Sox in 59, when they won the pennant and went to the World Series, and gave Chicagoans a lot of hope when they won the first game, and then unfortunately got blasted the rest of the series. So, but Nellie Fox, number 2, again, another fine memory. Not so much that I saw him play, but because of his presence on a little circular card that we boys would play and run out complete seasons over the summer with those guys.
Wow, that's a great memory too. I mean, how many times just having the baseball cards and football cards, hockey cards, and getting to interact in some of the games that they had, like Stratomatic. I'm not sure if that's the game you're talking about, but that's what we played when I was a kid. And you get to have some of your favorites or little electric football or the baseball games where you have your favorite player playing and you're always that guy and your friend's always, another guy or another team. And you really make a connection with those players by doing that. It sounds like you did that with the game you were playing and Mr. Fox.
Yeah, it's amazing. You lean over the side of your bed and you can play against yourself, or if your buddies come over and they'd have their team and their cards and you get your lineup and stick them in there after every turn. And it was quite accurate. You would really, because of the width of the out feature on each of those circular cards. So it's quite a bit of fun. I wish I had that game. I wonder how many guys have said that, though. But I did keep the baseball cards, so I still have those.
Wow, well, that's the valuable part, that's for sure.
And seeing these names and kind of doing a little bit of research on each of the players was quite fulfilling and interesting. I had a blast. So thank you so much for allowing me to share that. And I hope I didn't bore you too much with my ramblings on about my favorite baseball players.
Thanks, Joe. Your stories about the Chicago White Sox are extremely inspiring, and it's intrigued me to find out more about the origins of the White Sox and their name and how they got to Chicago. Well, the White Sox story begins in Sioux City, Iowa, I learned, of all places, in 1893, according to the MLB.com history on the team. Their nickname was the Cornhuskers. Yeah, the Sioux City Cornhuskers. And they were founded as a minor league team back there in 1893. Now, near the end of that inaugural season, a substantial person in hardball history purchased the club, a man named Charles Comiskey. The new owner moved the franchise from Iowa to St. Paul, Minnesota, and they became known as the Saints in those parts of the Western League. Now, when the Western League merged and morphed and helped create the new American League in 1900, the Saints moved to the city of Chicago. The predecessor of today's Chicago Cubs were already playing in the Windy City on the north side and had a pretty large following there. Being the marketing genius that he was, Comiskey tried to associate himself with the senior circuit team in every way that he could to bring fandom to his own club and recognition. And after he was told that he could not have the word Chicago stitched across the front of his uniforms, Charles did the next best thing. He renamed the Saints to the moniker that the present-day Cubs had used to be called, and then abandoned that name. It was called the White Stockings. Now, where did the White Stockings come from? Well, remember in our post on baseball uniforms of the 19th century, when we discussed an experiment in 1882 when the players of certain positions wore specifically colored uniforms to denote their playing positions. That era was called the clown costumes era. Well, the long, highly worn socks or stockings were the only way anyone could denote which team the players were playing on. Each team had their own selection of a certain color of stockings that they wore for identity purposes. The Chicago team, predecessor of the Cubs, wore white. Hence, they were often called the White Stockings. Since we already stated that the modern-day Sox were not started until 11 years later in 1893, these white stocking players in the 1880s eventually became the Cubs of the National League. The marketing ploy worked as there were plenty of fans still relating to the 1880s team name, and they were immediately drawn nostalgically to the Southsiders. The shortening of the stockings to a simple socks was credited to the ingenuity of newspapermen in the early 20th century in an effort to get the team's name in the headlines. Remember, the headline space is very limited and every letter counts. And the word stockings, and especially Chicago White Stockings, is truly long indeed. So if you could just call them the White Sox or the Sox, S-O-X, 3 letters, much better than the 20-some letters that the full name would be. Now, part of the deal when they joined, the American League joined in playing in Chicago, they had to have an agreement. And James Hart, the president of the Chicago National Ball Club, was that the former Saints team could only play south of 35th Street. Well, the new White Sox played their first game as Chicago in Champaign, Illinois, as they knocked off the University of Illinois 10-9. That same season, on April 21st, 1900, the Sox played their first game at a small field at 39th and Princeton. The current ballpark is located at 35th and Shields. Well, they won their first game on April 22nd, 1900, with a 5-3 victory over the Brewers. And on October 14th, 1906, the White Sox won the lone All-Chicago World Series with an 8-3 victory over those Cubs, that they got permission to play in Chicago from, in 6 games per the MLB account. Now, I also want to point out that the MLB.com we have a link to it. They have a really great site with the history of the logos and the uniforms of the Chicago White Sox, and I definitely recommend that you go pay that some attention, because it's really quite a neat little site and has some great logos, some great history found on their MLB.com. And like I said, we have a link on our JerseyDispatch.com that is associated with this podcast, and we hope you'll check those out. And I hope you enjoyed the history today, because I certainly learned a lot, both from Joe Ziemba talking about Nellie Fox and his great playing times with the Sox, and my own look up and research on the history of the White Sox. Just a brief history and from their origins. And we hope you'll join us next time as we go through some more great sports history through the uniforms, gear that the competitors wore. Until next time, everybody, have a great sports history day. Sorry, but my pitching coach just called timeout and he's coming out to the mound. I think I'm going to get yanked for a reliever. We'll see you back tomorrow for some more great sports history on Sports Jersey Dispatch Podcast. We invite you to check out our websites, JerseyDispatch.com and PigskinDispatch.com. Not only see the daily sports history, but to experience the preservation of great events and people that play the games. Find us on Pigskin Dispatch. It's also on social media outlets of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all your daily sports history. Pigskin Dispatch is happy to be associated with the Sports History Network, the sports headquarters of yesteryear, found at sportshistorynetwork.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings you sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.